No, you're number one, and it's nice to see you again. It's been a little while since we've been in Washington, D.C. at the FAM, the Franciscan National Network weekend. Welcome and pleased time is yours.
Thank you so much. And it's wonderful being with everyone today. And first, I want to give thanks for the Tiwa people who have been the caretakers where I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, for eons. And they've lived here, they have prayed, they hold ceremonies, and all of that amidst great persecution and many sorrows. And next, I'd like to just say that the reflections I'm going to offer are kind of a context for maybe how we show up at some of these advocacy things and at the COP. I've had the privilege to be at several COPs, including the one in 2015, the Paris Agreement that took place. And that was in due part, I really believe, because of both Laudato Si, Pope Francis, and many other world leaders like Muslims and Jewish people and others who were quite vocal with very important statements that year regarding climate. So as darkness set last night, and I was continuing to prepare this short reflection, a beautiful cricket with her song greeted me through my open window. And she reminded me that there are many living beings, sisters and brothers who are kin that wanted to share today, and that their voices are important as we show up in these particular circles, even internationally. There was another voice that came to me also from a Laguna woman from back at the time when we had just elected the president in the United States. And Christina was with me at a meeting called MACE, which is the Multicultural Alliance for Safe Environment, which includes Navajo, Laguna, Acoma people, and some of us who are Anglo. And we address the long legacy and the injustices of uranium mining and cleanup, and the prevention of future mining, which is occurring right now as we move into circles where some people believe that we need to move into nuclear power more. And so I work in solidarity with these folks. And I was talking with Christina about the challenging moment that we're living in. And she was sharing, and she said that she had been talking with her Laguna elder sisters about how to move forward. They reminded each other that there are signs and messages that are very sacred that are revealed each day, and that it is our responsibility to pay attention to what is needed and to teach the young to pay attention. As Franciscans, I really believe maybe the deepest call at this moment is to pay attention in many ways and many levels. And this means that we have to give over part of ourselves in order to be open to listening and acting in new ways demanded of us in the times that we're living. And these are a challenging time for us around the world. And ironically, it feels like we as Franciscans are living within a graced Franciscan vortex as we find ourselves in these crisis times. Because we're celebrating the 800th anniversary of the Canticle, we're reflecting upon the 10th anniversary of Laudato Si, and we are listening to the life song of Pope Francis in his passing. These Franciscan elements remind us that we are one, that we are kin, that we all have responsibility to live courageously in love and justice in our world, and that is how we need to show up. I personally take great heart in knowing, and believe it's important to share with the world, that when Francis composed the Canticle, he was in a literal dark night with physical blindness. And he was also probably living in a dark night of the soul as he reflected upon his life with disappointments and pain and with a longing to more intimately be aligned with Christ and the message of justice and sisterhood and brotherhood in the world. But out of that darkness emerged a canticle that unveiled a radical and prophetic call to understand and to live as one in an interconnected kinship. More than ever, the canticle is revolutionary, is a call to oneness, as we experience worldwide and in this country dehumanization of people, threats to immigration and refugees, human rights that are violated on many, many levels, and as we grapple with the sixth greatest extinction of species and biodiversity, all within a climate crisis expressed in increasing droughts, floods, and disruptions to the cycles of actual living on this planet. We live with the daily dust of crumbling systems out of whose rubble we must recycle that which is important to build just and equitable new structures, to live in reciprocity and harmony with one another and all creation. The canticle calls us to pay attention in evolving and new ways. And for myself, the line of the canticle that speaks most profoundly and has for many years is, "Praise be you, my God, through our sister Mother Earth, who sustains and governs us, and who produces various fruit with colored flowers and herbs." I think it's important to carry this into those places of advocacy and into those international spheres of the COP. Governs us. Sister Mother Earth ultimately governs us. This is the only stanza in the canticle that addresses part of creation, not only as sister or brother, but also mother. The word sustains reveals that our very lives depend upon the earth as she nurtures and offers us life herself, and as we act in response. But earth governs us. Each day we hear headlines of governance about the United States and around the world, and the problems in governance and human rights and in caring for this earth, that all might have food and water and life. Ultimately, governing is about helping life flourish. Realities are faced as with wisdom and guidance rooted in essential values of reciprocity, love, service, and kinship for the common good. If we really believe that Sister Earth, our mother, sustains and governs us, how will we allow her to do so? What do I and we need to do to pay attention and to learn? And what does it mean that Sister Mother Earth governs us, not me, us, the entire planet? As we continue to walk, often wearily and reluctantly, within our polycrisis moment, and maybe feeling that we are ourselves in the dark night of the soul, we need to remember that we are in a vortex of grace where the canticle sings in and through our souls. May we pay attention with loving eyes and hearts as kin and brothers and sisters, and may we exchange our notes with others here and around the planet within the canticle of life as part of an ongoing prophetic song with the crickets, with the Christinas that we work with, and within the heartbeat of Mother, Sister Earth, who sustains and governs us.
Thank you very much. I think your message is Franciscan grace moment, this moment of vortex. I think that sets kind of a context. And in a sense, I think what you laid out for us is an attitude, the stance, if you will, a listening stance as we move forward with the world, with the international community, in thinking through this event, which we call COP, tying that with so many peoples globally, and allowing that to be linked to what's happening to the planet, but also an invitation then for us, after we've listened, we've heard the Spirit speaking, and through the governments of Mother Earth, and through so many people, and so much wisdom that's found on this planet, that we allow those to lead us into a different reflection on the gathering we will prepare for in Company COP 30. And in light of that, I'd like to now invite one of our own from Franciscan National, Marya, to make a bit of COP 30.
Myself, everybody hear me? Thank you all for coming today, listening from Midtown, like Farah, Beth, and DC, Nancy, and everyone between those that are joining us online. Sorry.
As close as possible to the mic and a little slower for the folks who are online, if that's up.
Sure.
Thanks.
So I'm going to speak more generally about our work on the environment and business and human rights and some of the connections going into how trying to highlight how all of these spaces are connected. So as Michael mentioned, I am the UN New York representative and Budi is the advocacy director based in Geneva. FI in general has focused a lot of its advocacy work towards the UN in both spaces on human rights and the environment, particularly. Okay.
Okay, keep going.
Okay, and we call for environmental justice and accountability in cases of human rights violations and abuses. A part of this, of course, consistent values and teachings, which we just heard. Maybe try to speak without the mic, but then it wouldn't work for the computer. It's okay.
Yeah, it might be a little closer if you were this. That's
Okay. So one of the areas of focus for the past number of years has been towards recognition of the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. The UN Human Rights Council just recently in Geneva recognized the right in 2021, October 2021, and the UN General Assembly in New York recognized the right in July 2022. And following recognition around our NRI towards implementation by states. So if you would, I'm going to slide. I just wanted to highlight a few small things in regards to this, right? First of all, it's recognized that since September 2024, I think is when the map was updated. It's recognized by 161 out of 193 member states at the UN. Constitutions, domestic laws, or as part of regional treaties. See if we're seeing that we can keep moving. It was also perfectly well before we actually started the presentation. The map had been on for a good half an hour.
I don't know what's happened. So, okay.
I'll give it before. You dropped a few things. I don't know if that's related to. So anyways, we have this beautiful map of all of the countries that may or may not be shown, and you will notice it's the map. And sorry, to also say we have booklets in the back that were written by the current special rapporteur on the right to a healthy environment by the UN, and that map is available as a booklet. Just for currently in New York, you'll notice that the US is not one of the countries that has recognized the right on the national basis. So with the right to a clean and healthy, sustainable environment, there are 6 substantive elements: clean air, safe climate, safe and sufficient water, healthy and sustainable food, non-toxic environments, healthy biodiversity. There are also 3 procedural elements, so how individuals can try and access these rights, so access to information, public participation, access to justice. This is all generally common with other human rights. And we have seen issues regarding respect for all of these elements, either individually or combined throughout the world, being raised by different individuals, communities, indigenous peoples. And so our work is on the environment is not only driven by, as we've said before, these Franciscan values that Sister Joan had mentioned, but really by the concrete concerns of Franciscans and secular and other partners globally who are both from and work with communities on the ground that experience the effects of environmental degradation and human rights abuses. So what we also see in these cases of environmental degradation are connections with businesses or so-called development projects around the world. And of course, state failure to respect, protect, and fulfill human rights, which is their obligation under international human rights law. So in particular, when we see these impacts on the environment, there are also other impacts on other human rights. So right to food, right to water, right to livelihoods, right to life, in many cases, unfortunately, amongst others. And we also often see attacks against human rights defenders and environmental defenders. And these are individuals that are not only defending their lands and their environment, with that, the livelihoods and cultures and food and lives of their communities and their families from businesses and the impacts that they have, but also they're really helping to protect the environment and mitigate the impacts of climate change and environmental degradation for all of us. Okay. Just making sure, because I had some very nice pictures to show you of different concepts that we're working on, but maybe as it'll pop back up, I can show you some. So the first picture was going to be Sri Lanka, where our partners are working, partnering with individuals and communities and organizations that work on tea plantations to make sure that workers have their rights recognized and fulfilled, but also on issues related to deforestation and biodiversity loss. Related to tea plantations themselves. The other picture that I was going to show is on the Solomon Islands, which Budi has visited some recently. We have another mission that's coming up in the next couple of weeks of our colleague Dion, who's the Asia Pacific coordinator. Their FI and our partners are working on issues related to the logging industry, and so logging has, of course, unfortunately contaminated polluted streams, rivers, and other water resources in the Solomon Islands, which has impacted water quality for both home use and has also affected fishing in coastal areas. And since the start of logging activities there, there's been increased occurrences of flash floods during the rainy season, which has destroyed crops and caused various other types of damages, which is checking in case they can pass up. And in Guatemala, we have seen a range of impacts of extractive activities that have been happening there, and continue to partner with colleagues. We've had our regional coordinator Olivia just there a couple of weeks ago or a month ago or so, giving a training on human rights systems at the UN and how individuals that are affected, including indigenous peoples, can access the UN and really try to bring their concerns and grievances and hope to try to have a change there. So having said all of these issues that we continually face, obviously most people are aware that businesses do impact individuals and communities, and there has been a variety of initiatives to try and regulate businesses themselves. So one of these was the UN Guiding Principles of Human Rights, which was voted unanimously at the Human Rights Council in 2011. And there are three pillars with the UN Guiding Principles. It's the state obligation to respect and protect human rights, business responsibility to respect, and also for there to be some sort of access to remedy for individuals and communities that have had their human rights violated. Within a year, I would say, of the UNGPs being passed, so in 2012, it was very clear that they weren't effective. They're non-binding principles. And even though these principles have really been mainstream, so you hear of businesses talking about them in their corporate social responsibility policies, they come to the UN for this forum every November or so in Geneva. It's essentially a big festival where businesses are saying, you know, the great work that they do, how they respect human rights. In practice, what we've really seen is just not only maintenance of abuses, but really an increase of abuse, of human rights abuses and environmental degradation. So again, quickly thereafter, this was already realized, and by 2012, the states from the global south said these guiding principles are really getting us nowhere, and we need finding legislation. So in 2014, there was another resolution passed by the UN Human Rights Council establishing a working group that was towards the elaboration of a treaty on this. So last year, it marked 10 years of the process, and we're currently on the 4th draft, and things are moving along, but maybe in a little bit of a better fashion with the changing of the chair towards the end of the process. But there's really no end in sight to when there might be a treaty that we be voting on. And it's also been kind of problematic as we take like 1 step forward and 2 steps backwards. So the 3rd draft had actually quite a good language in regards to the environment. The 3rd draft was done in, let's say, July or August of 2021. And it included in its definition of human rights abuses, something on the right to healthy environments, included language on the need for environmental and climate change impact assessments, and all of that was removed in the draft. So again, it's this constant battle and a really dynamic process of a dynamic process of
Wait, hold on, keep going.
Maybe I'll continue and then I'll go back to explain the pictures very quickly. So yeah, okay. So this is the one page for OHCHR. Thank you so much. And again, it's a constant process where we go to Geneva, we have all of these expectations and different things happen. Some colleagues have described it as a soap opera where every year there's some big drama and we're wondering if the process will continue at all. But I think one thing that's very important to say is while this process is taking place, there are a lot of things that we can all be doing. First of all, to inform, especially for those in DC, there's a lot of US government representatives that don't know very much, if anything at all, of the process, including encouraging wherever we are in the states that we're in, and the government's officials to say that this is important internationally, but also to try and impact change locally. So I would say that the US has been a bad faith actor, I would say, in this process, more or less. And if you want to go, well, actually, maybe you could go to the next slide. And just to really underscore, we've heard of all of the different things that have been happening under the Trump administration, defunding of specific agencies, including those related to the environment. There's an executive order, I think, within the past week or so to expedite deep sea mining. But I really want to highlight these things as we've been going to the UN for this treaty process for 10 years. These are things that continually arise no matter oftentimes the administration. So just to point out, under the Biden administration, who has been voted by some that it's climate president for vote. As mentioned, there was the vote for right to healthy environment July 2. Is it still on? Yeah. And immediately after that vote, within the same session, 10 minutes later, US did vote for recognition. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yeah.
Within a few minutes of their vote, they gave a statement or an explanation of their vote. So they said, a right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment has not been established as a matter of customary international law. Treaty law does not provide for such a right, and there's no legal relationship between such a right and international law. So they went on to say, even though we voted yes, basically you cannot hold us to this standard because it hasn't been established. And I would, well, I'll get up to the next section. For the 7th session of the process towards elaborating a treaty on business and human rights, the U.S. publicly called for all states to move away from the process, and they wanted to try to develop some sort of framework agreement, which is really just very loose principles that again would make business accountability very difficult. And they kept calling for the treaty to be less prescriptive, so to have less information or less kind of rules and also established procedures of what can be moved forward within it. And in the 10th session again, which was just in December of 2024, the U.S. again noted their concerns regarding the draft treaty, and I think this is an interesting quote regarding the draft treaty. It appears observing that a considerable percentage of states that are home to the world's largest transnational corporations have pursued only limited participation in these negotiations. So, of course, the U.S. is home to many transnational organizations or businesses, and what we often see are the faux NGOs, for lack of a better word, like the International Chamber of Commerce, the International Organization of Employers that have postdoc status, like we do as well. That when it's their turn, there's some either explicit cooperation or they're already on the same track in terms of what they aspire for the treaty. So the U.S. will give a statement and then it's echoed by the ICC or the IOB at these negotiations. And so one thing that I would also say in terms of the consistency of the positions by the U.S. is the consistency of business interests that are showing up at these different forums. So we've obviously seen it at this IGWG. We have colleagues that work on the plastics treaty again. We want to see countless businesses showing up there. That every single year we see some headlines on the amount of oil and gas industries that are showing up at conference. I'm sure people will speak about. So again, these, no matter who the governments or the representative is, especially in the U.S., these business interests are always present. So we always have to keep pushing and really not let our guard down because they're clearly as well. So I'll just go back to the beginning if there's anything maybe in terms of the pictures to highlight. Yeah, just the map maybe as the first one. Just very quickly. So the medium green is recognized in the state's constitution or laws. Light green only if the regional treaties, and the darkest green is kind of difficult. Then both. So of course the U.S. does not have it recognized. Anything, even though there are a few state constitutions that have it. You can go, yeah, and this is also found in the report that I have mentioned at the back of the room, the substantive and procedural elements of the right to healthy environment. And just maybe the pictures really quickly, the top one of the tea plantations in Sri Lanka, bottom of Solomon Islands. And then the next one is in Guatemala. So this is the cement factory that produces dust and debris and contaminates crops quite a distance away from where the cement plantation is. And this is one of our partners from Guatemala that is presenting on how one of the mines there contaminates the water source. You can see the skeletal mining man, he's quite the artist as well. So Julio, I think this is his name, is a lawyer, and he came to Geneva for the Human Rights Council session.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Marya. We're going to move on. The next, there's one thing that I retained is that we made a transition from the initial presentation of a vision of spirituality, Franciscan and other charisms represented here, to the real life situations of people, and looking at what is conditioning, what is placing people at risk, what is placing our whole human community, but also our whole earth community at risk, and the increasing, in a sense, a denial or a sense of trying to separate and divide the link between these various elements. And the link between all of the human, the environmental conditions that both basically contribute to a clean, safe, healthy environment. So I think with that, I'd like now to invite Beth. Please join us, Beth. The spot is yours. Welcome.
Thank you. It is great to almost see all of you. I think I'd rather be in the room with you because there's some pretty amazing people there. Hello from Wisconsin, and these are the Ho-Chunk lands that I am on, and it is a real privilege, so thank you again for the opportunity. I want to share with you one of my favorite quotes from Laudato Si to kind of help set the stage, because I'm going to talk about integral ecology and right to a healthy planet, kind of going off of what we just have heard from the last two speakers. So this is Laudato Si, line 159. Consciously considering intergenerational solidarity should be at the heart of all our decisions. Our environment must be preserved for future generations. And one of the reasons why that is important to me stems back to my introduction to you, is that my vocation has been as a mother, and with my work, and I believe the mission work that many Franciscans have been part of with education, is how are we preparing those future generations, and how can we be part of that, not only for people, but for planet. So if integral ecology is looking at the interconnectedness between people and planet, what are the relationships that we have, and how are we being asked to have an education about it, but then unlearning some of the things that we have learned so that we can be better stewards within that space. We just saw a very great graphic about right to a healthy planet. And I'm just going to mention again what those bullet points were. Right to a healthy planet includes clean air, safe climate, safe water and sufficient water, non-toxic environment to live, play, and work in, healthy and sustainable food, healthy biodiversity and ecosystems, and also access to information, public participation, and access to justice. Now, just this week, I had the privilege in Wisconsin to listen to a program on digital equity, and it just blew me away of how that is related to integral ecology in so many different levels. And within this scope of right to a healthy planet, we have multiple layers as Franciscans that we can think about what it is coming down the pipeline with COP30. And yes, I used pipeline on purpose to kind of like aggravate everyone into action. And ultimately, as we heard from Sister Joan, kin, that is really important because we are kin. We are brothers and sisters together. We have the Canticle of the Creatures. And I had the good fortune in February of going on pilgrimage to Assisi. Father Jim, if he's around, that he was one of our leaders, and it was a phenomenal visit. There are legacies and histories that we have with our Franciscan values, and we know those. Some of us know them better than others. And how can we build off of that and learn from the history, whether it be in Europe or on Turtle Island? And there we can start and understand or unlearn how we can then better treat Mother Earth as we have thought to think about the sacredness and the spaces that she actually provides. Because remember, we need her more than she needs us. So a couple of things that I wanted to share with you, because in my scope, there is two worlds that I straddle. There's the Franciscan lens as integral ecology director, working with the Franciscan sisters of Perpetual Adoration. And then there's the secular world with the scientists and the conservationists that talk about climate change and regenerative agriculture. And honestly, they have the same mission. It is just a different language. And within my scope of work right now, here are some things that I'm finding that have similar meanings. We talk about invitation and witness within a Franciscan lens. And that is meaning we want to have people understand where they're coming from, of what the impacts might be, and how they could possibly participate in what that change could look like. We have Franciscan values, Catholic social teaching, Laudato Si goals, Franciscan economy, the UN Sustainable Development Goals. There are social determinants of health. There are whole systems determinants. There are climate resiliency hubs. These are different ways of talking about climate language as well as caring for creation language. We have, again, that common thread, and we can figure out ways that the COP language will be part of our everyday language so that we can think about our actions from the past, our current actions, and what is happening that will impact those intergenerations and specific future generations of our common work and our common home. I'm catching us up on time, so here we go.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yep.
Okay, so you bring a particular focus, I think, from Laudato Si, the direction of vision, and then what that future, but what it means for the future. We're not just for us now, what we're consuming and taking care of ourselves, but really challenging the paradigm, the vision, and encouraging us to move forward, which is part of what I believe COP is all about. I'd like now to hand the microphone over to our Chief Advocacy Officer at Franciscan International.
Thank you very much, Michael, and good afternoon, everyone. So I'm very happy to be with you all, with the Franciscan families and friends. And it is very timely for us to have discussions on the issue of environment and climate justice, because, of course, the legacy of Pope Francis that has left us should be continued. So it's very important for us that we should be inspired by our Catholic social teachings, but also by the teaching of Pope Francis and, of course, Saint Francis and Saint Clare. I will talk a little bit regarding COP30 and how we are engaged in COP30. Normally there is something in white over there, but never mind. So you still can see the picture coming from our engagement in COP26 in Glasgow. So from that picture you can see two Franciscans, Clark, the Anglican Franciscans, and Angel, OXFAM from the Philippines. What I wanted to say is that the Franciscans have been involved in the climate and environmental justice since St. Francis, and we continue until now. And it is our mandate to work on it, and it is our mandate as well to be engaged at a different level. So engagement at the international level to COP processes is one of many levels of engagements that we have. If we talk about the international institutions on climate, in fact, we started since long time ago, and I'm sure that some of you were not yet born at that time, but we were already there, engaged in different climate and environmental discussions. The two key World Climate Conferences took place in 1979. The IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, was established and created in 1988. And then in 1990, it was the discussion in which the UN Advocacy, the United Nations Framework Conventions on Climate Change. So we talk about abbreviations a lot here, so I hope it's not going to be too confusing. So it was very important that since 1990, we have what we call as Advocacy that has the mandate from the UN to address the issue of climate change. And then in the Earth Summit in 1992, I think some of you were there. Mike, you were there in 1992. So it was very important because that's the foundation of what we have now as a conference of parties to UNFCCC. So Earth Summit is the departure point for the international community to work very seriously to address climate change. And at the time, the UNFCCC was signed by 169, and currently it is signed by 199 countries and territories. So that's why the number is quite high. And then Kyoto Protocol was adopted in 1997. The objective is really to reduce, to have the agreement, binding agreement to reduce the emissions. And then after that, we advanced. And in 2009, if some of you remember, 2009 was very, very important because at that time we almost had the climate accord, climate agreement. But in the last minute, it was not signed. And I still remember that from Franciscans International, we had Sister Odile Poitier. She was there, and it was she provided us with live coverage of the negotiations. And it was really, really disappointing that at the end it didn't come up with the agreement. And then after that, we had the 2015 climate conference, and many of us were there. I'm very happy to hear that Sister Joan was there, Michael was there, Ben Ayurti was there, and many of us were there. And I was there as well. And we were very much inspired because the Advocacy was issued just a few months before that. I still remember quite well that some of the negotiators saying that we have the moral guidance in the negotiations, and then it was really a reference of even beyond the Catholic, beyond the Christian circle, because it was really strong voice to say that we have the moral and ethical obligation to take care of our Mother Earth. So it was very, very powerful. And then the Paris Agreement becomes now the main reference for us because it set up the target to have the increase of global temperature below 2 degrees Celsius, and when possible, and that's the main target. In fact, it's 1.5 degree. So it was very important that the 1.5 degree was very much pushed by the small island states, especially in the Pacific and the Caribbean, because for them it's about life and death. As Marya said, we have Franciscans in Solomon Island, and we have Brother Chris from the African Franciscan that visits Solomon Island quite often. And I remember when I went in 2022, at that time, Solomon Island lost already 5 islands. They lost 5 islands because of the increase of the sea level. And it's going to be more and more. And we were in touch also with Kiribati. For example, Kiribati, they said, our target is that we will have relocations because we know that we will disappear. So I spoke at that time with the president of Kiribati, who attended the meeting in Geneva, and he said, for us, the policy of the country is migration with dignity. So it's very touching because they know that they will disappear. They know that the country will disappear because the highest level in most part of Kiribati is 2 meters above the sea level. So 2 meters is like, this is the maximum of the height of the country. So when you have the high tide, etc., they will disappear. And then there were many COP and COPs and COPs and COPs. And then the last COP that we had was one of the COP that, for me personally, is the most disappointing. COP 24 in 2024, COP 29 in Baku, Azerbaijan, in which we discussed about having the finance COP that will have ambitious financial commitment to address the climate change, but the engagement was very, very low. It's very, very disappointing. So that's more or less where we are now. And then the next slide. Let's see. What are the key failures of COP29 in Baku? Before talking about that, it's very interesting to take note that the last 3 COPs were organized in the country that produced oil. So it was like slap on the eye, really slap on the face. We organized COP in the countries that produce lots of oil. And when we were in Baku, it was very interesting because if you go toward the top menu, and then you have the National Company of Oil and Gas sponsoring the whole thing, very visible. Like you can't avoid it. You are reminded that yes, we are there, and for sure we will be inside. And then the last 3 COPs also, you will see that within the delegations or within COP, you have at least around 1,500 to 1,700 oil lobbyists, oil and gas fossil fuel lobbyists. So it's part of the fact. How to deal with that? Because that's the fact. They are inside, either as Marya said, as civil society, or often they are as part of the negotiators, adopted by the government, adopted within the delegation. So it's very clear. So that's the context that we have. And in the last 3 COPs as well, the space for the civil society inside is getting smaller, smaller, and smaller. So, for example, in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, it was in the middle of nowhere. Let's put it in that. It's resort area, no? It's in the middle of nowhere. The prices of the hotel was extremely expensive. The cheapest one was something like $450 a night. How can you bring someone from Burkina Faso, or someone from Chad, or someone from Costa Rica to be there as people that are affected by climate change, to be part of the process? And it happened again in Dubai, and it happened again in Baku, in which the space of the civil society is really very small. And then, in fact, one of the characters of the 3 COP is that there was no possibility for us to make any demonstration, any climate march. Not possible at all. By law, it's not possible. Otherwise, you will be arrested. And there were also cases in which visa was very difficult. Many civil society were denied to get visa, or if they get visa, they get deported. If they, break the law in terms of doing demonstrations, whatever. So we see that in the last 3 COPs, the civil society role has been put in a certain way to be very difficult. And now COP30 is something else that I will explain later. But from the COP29, I take notes on several key, what I call it, key failures. First is that the climate finance was the big disappointment. Was a big disappointment. While we agreed on the need, but when we talk about how much that we can put together per year, it's very small. And we are not talking about the real money. This is talking about the commitment. While the reality might be different, even the commitment only is reducing, so it's very small. And then we were discussing about the fossil fuels, about phasing out. In Dubai, we didn't say phasing out. We said transition away. Transition away, getting away. So it's not phasing out, because what we want is phasing out, change, phasing out. But having it organized in Sharm el-Sheikh, Dubai, Baku, of course, the language has been watered down very clearly in front of our eyes to be phasing out. And then the carbon market. Carbon market is also very interesting. I'm not an expert on that, but like what Beth said, sometimes we need also to have the language that is understood by the people. No? The language of carbon market, if you look at the documents, even God will not understand. This is a very technical language. The carbon market basically is like we trade like you, the developing countries, keep your forest, don't do anything with your forest, so that we can continue to consume the lifestyle is same as before. That's practically in the language. Then we will give you some small grants so that you can, be in your traditional life, don't be developed, but we will continue. And we will pay you, we'll give you some money. That's the best. And then we can go to the next one. And there are also some other failures, but in COP30 Belen, there are some hopes. The first hope is that at least there will be space for civil society. So this is the first time in 4 years we will have the space of our own, so that we can speak, we can demonstrate, we can express our opinion, because it's very important. We need to reclaim the space again. The space that was taken out from us, we need to reclaim it again. So one of the key issue is about the nationally determined contribution. What does it mean? It means the commitments given by each government on how they will reduce the emission. Even currently, if all these NDCs, you call it NDCs, are implemented, fully implemented, the temperature is still raised around 4 degrees. Even if it is fully implemented. So it means that we need to be very, very ambitious. And then the second one is about the climate finance. Due to the failure that we have in Baku, I think we need really to scale up. States need to scale up so that we will have enough money to tackle the climate crisis. And also we need also to have the tangible implementations of climate actions. We need to see something that is tangible. It's not something that is much more political. So it is very difficult for us. But since COP is going to be in the Amazon, the COP is going to take place in the global south, the COP is going to be open to the civil society, we will try to push as much as possible to achieve that. So the next one. So the next one also. I used to be a teacher, so that's why I speak well. So, the role of NGOs, in particular the role of faith-based organizations, is very important because we are complementary with the NGOs. Within the NGOs itself, you have different divisions. You have the indigenous peoples organizations, you have women's caucus, you have the youth caucus, etc., etc. But all in all, it's within the NGOs. As Marya has explained as well, you also have the businesses in the in the jacket of NGO. They say that they are NGOs, but they are business-oriented organizations, and they are there. So we have to deal with that, so that's why for us it's very important because our role is to influence the policy. So we have to discuss with the negotiators, try to talk to the negotiators, and luckily enough, what I experienced, I work closely also with the World Council of Churches, with the Advocacy organizations. Sometimes the delegation within the government, there are people from the faith perspective. So since we know some people from the faith perspective, then we can influence them. I still remember when we were in Glasgow, but also it was in Bonn, if I'm not mistaken, when we have the Franciscans with the habits. It's very interesting. Some delegates just come and go and approach the Franciscans. You're Franciscans. I'm also Catholic. And we can have negotiations. It's opening up the discussions. So for us, it's very important that we are there, we are known, and all of a sudden they are reminded by the ethical and moral obligation. Whether it's going to take place really the changes or not, but at least they are reminded about their faith, about their ethical perspective. I have 2 minutes. And then this is the picture again from there. So in the conclusion is that our presence is very important. We have to be there. We have to claim our space. But within 1 minute, we can go to the next one to see what we are going to do in PLM. So in PLM, we are going to talk about 2 key issues, what we call as non-economic loss and damages. It's important because we have loss and damages caused by climate change. But take also into account the non-economic aspect. Not everything is about money. What about spirituality? What about culture? What about way of life? They are affected. We did the research in which people from the mountains, because of the melting of the snow in Nepal and some other people, they have to go down. It's a different culture. In the Pacific, like in Kiribati, that I know better, they don't have any palms on the coastal side, while from mother to daughters, they tell stories encountered by weaving bags coming from the palm trees. But there's no more palms now. So they have to go inland. They go inland or to the mountains, but the culture of fishing is disappearing. So there are certain aspects that is lost, and then it's important for us to reclaim it back. And the just transition. Just transition is often we call it just energy transition. But whose green energy? When we have the nice Tesla, we need the minerals that are taken from the indigenous people's territory. In Brazil and different places. We have nice tar, so-called green tar, but at the same time, we are sacrificing people in different places. So we are trying to engage in different activities like that. We will organize events, side events. We will be part of the final parts. And when possible, we will always be in dialogue with the negotiators so that they will be reminded that they have the moral and ethical obligations and responsibility toward the matter. So thank you.
It's always so much for the moderator having to put times on the things. But first, thank you very much to all four of you. I think Sister Joan, Sister Joan, are you still there? I think she had to go to Kennedy at 4 o'clock, so we regret that she was not able to stay. I'm not going to do any reciting of what was said. I think we've heard a variety of different kind of takes, if you will. We've moved from spirituality, we've moved into the practical, what the impacts are, and who are some of the players that might be trying to prevent the types of change and transformation that need to take place in order to arrive at a clean, safe, healthy, sustainable environment. And then how that is played out in the different bodies of the United Nations, but beyond that, the world, the entire world community to be engaged on this issue, to use its power, but also to use its resources in order to try to resolve or to address the needed transformation that we intend the world expects and that the entire Earth community will need. I'd like to open it now for very briefly for a few moments of discussion of not really discussion. First, do you have any questions that might be questions of clarification or for additional information that you'd like to address to Beth, Marya, or to Budi? So let's.
Thank you. I have a question for Budi. On the issue of non-economic loss and damages, you said not everything's about money, and yet in raising those issues, like what kind of solutions or proposals would a faith organization like Franciscans International be putting forward to address non-economic loss and damages?
Thank you very much. In fact, we on that issue, we did a study in which we asked some faith leaders on what do they think. It's not only about our thinking as Franciscans, but also some other faith leaders. So we have the publication, we are promoting our publication behind together with the Lutheran World Federations, in which we interviewed different faith leaders, not only the Christians, but also traditional faith, other faith, to ask them what we want. Because for us, one of the key issues is that the faith leaders, the faith community has to be involved in the discussions and in finding the solutions, which is not the case for the moment. Often the faith communities are put down. They have the discussions with some technical people, but when the problem comes, the people come to the faith leaders. There are some examples in which people got that anxiety, people got stressed. They don't go to the government officials. They go to the faith leaders. And it's important then for the faith leaders to be involved in the policy with regard to climate actions. So this is one of our proposals, that to engage also the faith communities, faith leaders, in finding solutions or in the implementations of climate actions. So this is one of the several recommendations that we have.
I just wanted to ask, what could we do on a more local level to help address these issues, especially, and I know this might sound kind of like a broad question, and we appreciate the work you all have done, but what are some of the things that we can do on a more local level?
So in terms of preparing for COP and some contribution that way, or addressing more specific issues related to climate change? Climate change, okay. Cool. Okay, so does anyone want to take a, Beth, what are your thoughts on that question? Did you get the question?
So I heard local level, and it was it in the sense of COP or just as an individual in like a household?
Both the COP, but also in terms of local level behavior. You know, what can we contribute to addressing climate change at the local, immediate level, and then hopefully perhaps even at some other levels?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I can take that question. There's a lot you can do. It depends how involved you want to be. So, you know, if you think of the 2 feet of love in action, it's charity and justice. So, where would you like to be met in the sense of climate action? Would you like to start where you are seated right now? There's prayer, and then there's the next level of learning. I personally think that we have all sorts of solutions for climate. We just need to have the will to do them. As an individual, you can start with reflection of your own purchases. You know, where has that been aligned with your values? And if you can do maybe just a one focus as water, if you think about the Canticle and a reflection of the pieces within that and your purchases, that would be a suggestion on where to start. There are many places, both within a city and rural, that you can find ways to be involved as an individual, as a community, a house of worship, and at a regional and state level. Then there's the advocacy piece at a regional and state level. That could be with some great organizations like Catholic Climate Covenant, BAN, hello in the front row. And then, you know, with COP 30, it's understanding, I think in my opinion, the full circle. If we are representing to our local Congress people in our state the issues of being in solidarity with the poor, that means we're connected to our brothers and sisters that are being impacted in the PowerPoint that was presented there. You know, a drop of water here or a molecule of oxygen there, it's the same no matter where you are. It's depending on the time and when you're actually going to be like using that molecule. So if we can think about it in that giant systems approach and how we're all interconnected, and it doesn't truly matter like our place, but that we have that connection. And if it's the robin in the tree or what was it, a cricket that she had, Sister Joan, you know, like we have a space and a place to have our voices heard. And it could be the cricket, and it could be those of us sitting in the chair right now.
Thank you very much, Beth. We've been having some problems with some of our technology today. There was a question that it was more one of the slides that we had some trouble presenting. Will those be available? And the answer is yes. We will send you the link. If you register and provide us with contact, we'll send you the link to all of those slides. Thank you. I think, is there another question that someone might have? Yes, in the back. Yeah.
Thank you, Budi. Thank you so much for speaking about the moral voice that is brought about by Franciscans, but especially following the conference one, we had the biggest moral voice that came from Pope Francis, and the document that has been really brought the Catholics to the international platform in terms of advocacy. But do you think that moral voice will disappear with the death of Pope Francis, but also with the polarized political environment that we have? And do you think this of 29 will make any difference? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll give you a concrete example. 2 days ago, I went to a discussion organized by the World Council of Churches, the Christian Aid, the Action Aid, etc. So climate finance linked to the finance for development (FFD) summit. They made reference to Pope Francis and St. Francis and Laudato Si. I think Veronica, you were there, so some of you were there. So it was really beautiful. You were there, no, Marya? I was quite surprised, nicely surprised. So it means really that the Laudato Si, the legacy of Pope Francis, really go beyond the life of Pope Francis, but also go beyond the Catholic circle. That I can mention. And in my interaction as well, with many faith-based organizations, even human rights organizations that sometimes is a bit allergic to religion, they still do make reference to either St. Francis or Laudato Si. And what is the difference between COP 30 with the previous COP? As I said, at least we can claim our space back. And we know that civil society, they are preparing what they call as People's Summit. That will be maybe giant summit. Because like we were constrained to speak in the last two COPs, now we will shout as loud as possible. Hey, you're there. Especially we will have it in the Amazon, because Amazon is one of the places that is badly affected, and it's going to be affected more. Even with the current president, it is still a challenge. So for us, if we are able to speak out, that will be one of the big difference that we can make in COP 30. And I'm very happy as well to hear from Brother Rodrigo and from other church actors that there are so many bottom-up approach within the Catholic Church, but also other churches. Not that they will really change the negotiations directly, but raising the awareness of the people. Because as you said, what we can do at local level, by raising awareness, then people can really see what they can do together. For me and for many people, Laudato Si is really one of the moral and ethical call that is very practical. That you can read and practically you can do certain things from that document. This document that everyone can read, like Beth said, we need to also have something that normal people can understand and can read. While if you look at all the decisions of COP, I've been in several COP, I'm still having headache not to understand the technical things, the abbreviations, and this thing and that thing. So we have, of course, the political documents that we need to understand, whether we like it or not. But also we have other documents like Laudato Si, and also the example of Pope Francis, because Laudato Si document by Pope Francis give us the real example, no? And that we need to continue that. And it's very, very inspiring. And I believe that it's going to inspire more. And I do believe that there will be references here and there on Pope Francis in COP 30. I can bet.
Thank you. We're going to have to come to a close because we just respect the time. We'd like to thank everyone present here. One sign of hope for the United States recently withdrew from the Paris Climate Accords. Someone who had read and studied Laudato Si, Michael Bloomberg velocities came forward and said they will make up the financial difference in order that the work continues. I think there are other signs of hope for this too. I'm calling Michael Bloomberg as person is suggesting that the impact of someone like Pope Francis on people beyond faith circles, beyond religious traditions, although those we certainly a person of religious tradition, but he and others are saying they're stepping up and they're willing to say, this is the future at risk, we must act. And I think this is what all of us here about Franciscan International, but there's some other groups here, other traditions, who are represented, and standing tall. So, and young people and older people. So this is intergenerational. It's even just in this room, intergeneration. It's wonderful. Let's keep in mind, there's cause for hope. But the hope, what Francis once said, hope is action. It's not a thought. It really is doing something. So let's continue to do something. We have some simple refreshments in Franciscan style in the back. We'd like you to stick around, greet each other. If you haven't signed in, please sign your name and the contact so we can send you the information for this. And we hope that the sound and everything will be fine. This will be available after the fact. I think it's going to be on YouTube. So we'll be available to be able to follow us again. Please continue to engage as we get ready to move toward the November 10th to 21st. Franciscans and some of the groups, religious groups, civil society, we will be there. We're going to be on the ground. We're going to say, we're here. We are here. Thank you very much.